The bustling trade station of Galaxis Prime was a place where species from across the universe mingled, exchanged goods, and shared knowledge. Humans were rare here, but Caleb had carved out a quiet life working as an engineer, fixing alien tech no one else dared to touch. Life was simple, and he liked it that way. Today started like any other. Caleb was on his way to the repair docks, a toolkit slung over his shoulder, when a strange sensation made him stop. Someone was watching him. Turning around, he saw her, a tall, elegant alien woman with shimmering blue skin and golden eyes that seemed to pierce right through him. She stood out, even in the crowd of diverse creatures. "Human," she said, her voice calm but commanding. Caleb blinked, unsure if she was talking to him. "You are Caleb, aren't you?" Yeah," he replied hesitantly. "Do I know you?" "I am Vela of the Cythery," she said, stepping closer. "My family has chosen you as my husband." Caleb froze. His brain scrambled to make sense of what she had just said. Surely, he'd misheard. Wait. What? Vela tilted her head, her expression calm but firm. "It is decided. You will marry me." Caleb's mouth opened, but no words came out. This had to be some kind of misunderstanding. He didn't know her or her family. "I think you've got the wrong guy," he finally managed. But Vela shook her head. "There is no mistake. My family is grateful for what you did." "What I did? What are you talking about?" She gestured for him to follow. Against his better judgment, Caleb walked with her through the crowded station, his mind racing. What had he done to deserve this strange honor or punishment? They entered a lavish chamber, far different from the industrial halls of the station. Inside, several Cythery sat in a semicircle, their golden eyes observing Caleb with interest. Their leader, an older man with an air of authority, spoke. "Caleb of Earth," the man began, "you saved my son's life when no one else dared. For that you have earned our eternal gratitude. And as is our custom, we offer you the greatest honor, a union with our daughter." Caleb's memory sparked. A few weeks ago, he had helped an alien boy stuck in a malfunctioning airlock. He hadn't thought much of it, just another day fixing things. But now it seemed his simple act had far greater consequences. "Look, I appreciate the gesture," Caleb said carefully. "But marriage, I'm not sure if that's." "Refusing would insult our family," Vela interrupted softly. Her tone carried no threat, but the weight of her words was clear. Caleb looked around the room, at the expectant faces and Vela's steady gaze. This wasn't just a proposal, it was a demand. And for the first time in his life, Caleb realized he might not have a choice. The room fell silent as Caleb tried to figure out how to get out of this without offending an entire alien species. Caleb sat stiffly in the ornate chamber, feeling the weight of every gaze in the room. The Cythery family's regal presence made him feel like a small fish in a galaxy-sized pond. Vela, seated beside him, looked as calm and composed as ever. Her golden eyes glimmered, showing no hint of hesitation, unlike Caleb's uneasy demeanor. The elder Cythery, Vela's father, leaned forward. "You must understand, Caleb of Earth, our customs are sacred. You saved my son, and in our culture, such bravery is repaid with the highest honor. Marriage is not just a bond between two people, it is a union of trust and respect. You are now family to us." Caleb swallowed hard. "I understand, but humans don't really work this way. Marriage is something we usually choose for ourselves." Vela's father frowned slightly, his golden eyes narrowing. "Do humans not value honor and gratitude, or do you see our daughter as unworthy?" No, that's not what I mean," Caleb quickly said, waving his hands nervously. He glanced at Vela, who watched him with an unreadable expression. "It's just, this is all happening so fast." Before Caleb could continue, a younger Cythery male, Vela's brother, spoke up. "Father, we must not expect a human to understand our ways. They are impulsive creatures, driven by emotions rather than logic. "Excuse me," Caleb said, raising an eyebrow. He wasn't sure whether to feel offended or impressed by the bluntness. Vela finally spoke, her voice steady but firm. "That is enough, Toran. Caleb saved your life. Do not belittle him." Toran looked away, chastised, but Caleb wasn't sure if that made him feel better. He was still stuck in the middle of a mess he didn't understand. "Look," Caleb said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I appreciate the gratitude, but humans are complicated. We're not used to having our futures decided for us." Vela's father sighed, his expression softening just slightly. "We understand that this arrangement may be difficult for you, Caleb, but in Zithari culture, rejecting such an offer would be seen as a grave insult. It would harm not only our honor but yours as well. Do you wish to bring shame upon yourself?" Caleb felt a pit in his stomach. Was this how diplomacy worked in the galaxy? One small misunderstanding could ruin everything. He glanced at Vela again, hoping to find some clue about what she thought of all this. To his surprise, her gaze softened. "Father," Vela said, her voice calm yet determined. "Perhaps Caleb needs time to understand our customs. This is new to him, after all." Her father nodded slowly. "Very well. Caleb, you may have some time to consider, but do not take too long. Our people are watching." As the meeting ended, Vela walked Caleb to the door. "I'll help you find a way," she said quietly, her tone softer now. "But you must trust me." Caleb nodded, unsure of what else to do. For now, he was trapped in a cultural whirlwind with no clear escape. Caleb paced nervously in his small quarters on the space station, his mind spinning with the events of the day. Marrying an alien woman was not something he ever expected to deal with. He had planned to fix broken machines, save up some credits, and maybe retire somewhere quiet. Now, he was caught in a Zithari marriage arrangement that could spark a diplomatic crisis if he refused. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Caleb hesitated before opening it to find Vela standing there, her tall, graceful figure framed by the dim corridor light. She looked composed, but her golden eyes carried a hint of concern. "May I come in?" she asked politely. Caleb nodded, stepping aside. "Sure. Not like I have much of a choice here either." She entered, her gaze sweeping over the modest room. "I wanted to talk to you," she said, her voice quieter than before. "I understand this situation is difficult for you. It is for me as well." "That makes two of us," Caleb muttered, sitting on the edge of his bed. "Your family seems intense. Saying no feels like walking into a minefield." Vela tilted her head slightly, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You're not wrong. Zithari honor is everything. But there may be a way out of this, if you're willing to work with me." Caleb sat up straighter. "I'm listening." She explained that Zithari marriage customs had a little-known clause. If one of the individuals was proven unfit as a spouse, the arrangement could be nullified without dishonor. The challenge was that unfit was determined by a series of trials. "The trials are designed to test compatibility and worthiness," Vela said. "If you fail them, the marriage will be called off. My family will accept it, and your honor will remain intact." Caleb frowned. "That sounds suspiciously convenient. What's the catch?" "The trials are not easy," she admitted. "They are tailored to Zithari strengths, physical, mental, and cultural. You'll be expected to fail, but you must fail convincingly without making it look deliberate. Otherwise, my family may suspect something." Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. "So I have to fail, but not too badly." "Great, no pressure." Vela stepped closer, her tone softening. "I will help you prepare. I don't want this marriage any more than you do. I have my own dreams, my own path. But we must be careful. My family is watching closely." Caleb met her gaze, seeing sincerity in her golden eyes. Despite the strange situation, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of trust forming between them. "All right," he said, sighing. "I'll do it. Let's fail these trials together." Vela nodded, a small smile breaking through her composed exterior. "Then we start tomorrow. Be ready, human. The first trial is one of cultural knowledge. I hope you're good at improvising." Caleb groaned inwardly. This was going to be a long, strange journey. The next morning, Caleb stood in the middle of a grand hall, his nerves on edge. The room was filled with Zithari spectators, their shimmering blue skin reflecting the soft glow of the chandeliers above. At the far end of the room, Vela's family sat on ornate thrones, observing him with sharp, calculating eyes. Vela stood beside him, her expression calm and collected as always. "The first trial," she whispered, "is a test of cultural knowledge. You must participate in a Zithari ceremonial tradition and prove your understanding of our ways. Remember, fail convincingly, but with dignity." "Fail with dignity." "Sure, no problem," Caleb muttered under his breath, his sarcasm barely masked. Before he could ask what the ceremony involved, an elder Zithari stepped forward. His deep, resonant voice echoed through the hall. "Caleb of Earth, your first trial is the Rhizon ritual. You must prepare and present a traditional Zithari dish to honor our ancestors. This will show your respect for our culture." Cooking. Caleb's heart sank. The last time he tried to cook, he'd nearly set his apartment on fire. He glanced at Vela, who gave him a subtle nod of encouragement. "You will have 1 hour," the elder continued. "The ingredients and tools are provided. Begin." Caleb was led to a table laden with unfamiliar ingredients, brightly colored fruits, oddly shaped vegetables, and jars of mysterious powders surrounded him. He picked up one fruit that looked like a cross between a starfish and a cactus. Poking it cautiously, it jiggled. "Great," he muttered. "Alien cooking. Just what I needed today." Vela stood nearby, acting as a silent observer. She couldn't help him directly, but her presence felt oddly reassuring. Caleb decided to wing it. He grabbed a few ingredients at random and started chopping, mashing, and mixing. The tools were as alien as the food, but he managed to figure out how to use a knife that vibrated slightly in a pot that heated without flames. As the minutes ticked by, the smell of his creation wafted through the hall. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't exactly promising either. Caleb added a pinch of a glowing purple powder, hoping it might save the dish, or at least make it look impressive. When the hour was up, Caleb stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. The elder approached and examined his creation, a lumpy, colorful stew with a faintly sparkling surface. The elder took a bite, his expression unreadable. The room fell silent as everyone waited for his verdict. Finally, the elder spoke. "This is unlike anything I have tasted before. It does not follow our traditions, but it shows creativity." Caleb's heart sank. He'd accidentally impressed them. Vela stepped forward, her voice calm. "Perhaps it reflects the human spirit, Father. They are known for their unconventional approaches." Her father nodded thoughtfully, and the trial was declared complete. Caleb had survived, but he knew the next challenge would be even harder. As they left the hall, Vela whispered, "You're too good at failing, Caleb. Try harder next time." Caleb sighed. "Trust me, I wasn't even trying to succeed." The second trial was scheduled for the next day, and Caleb had barely slept. He couldn't stop replaying the disaster from the first trial, where he'd accidentally impressed Vela's family with his random attempt at cooking. Now, as he stood in another grand chamber, he couldn't help but wonder what fresh nightmare awaited him. Vela stood beside him, her usual calm expression masking any worry she might have felt. "Today's trial is a test of intellect," she explained quietly. "The Zithari are known for their complex puzzles, designed to challenge even the sharpest minds. Your goal is to solve the puzzle, or appear to struggle so much that they doubt your suitability." "Got it," Caleb muttered. "Pretend to be a clueless human. Shouldn't be too hard." Vela gave him a faint smirk but said nothing. The elder Zithari stepped forward, holding a metallic cube that glimmered with faint blue light. He set it down on a pedestal in front of Caleb. "This is the Shardra puzzle," he announced. "It is an ancient artifact of our people, a test of logic and patience. Solve it to demonstrate your worthiness as a partner to our daughter." Caleb stepped closer, studying the cube. It was covered in intricate patterns and small glowing symbols that shifted and changed as he touched them. He glanced at Vela, who gave him an almost imperceptible nod. "Take your time," the elder said. "There is no limit, but haste is valued." Caleb's heart sank as he turned the cube in his hands. He had no idea what he was looking at, let alone how to solve it. The symbols seemed to pulse in response to his touch, rearranging themselves into patterns that made no sense. "Great," he muttered under his breath. "A Rubik's Cube from hell." He decided to approach the puzzle like he would a malfunctioning piece of machinery. Testing each side, Caleb pressed and twisted parts of the cube, watching how the symbols reacted. He wasn't trying to solve it, just trying to make it look like he was putting in a genuine effort. The problem was, Caleb's natural curiosity got the better of him. As he experimented, he started to notice patterns in the symbols. Some glowed brighter when paired together, while others dimmed. Without meaning to, he began piecing the puzzle together. After a few more adjustments, the cube let out a faint hum and clicked into place. The symbols aligned perfectly, forming a glowing, intricate design. Caleb froze, realizing he'd done it again. Had solved the trial he was supposed to fail. The elder stepped forward, his golden eyes wide with approval. "Impressive. Few outsiders have solved the Shardra puzzle so quickly. Truly, you are worthy." Vela shot Caleb a look that was equal parts disbelief and amusement. As they left the chamber, she leaned in and whispered, "Do you always accidentally succeed at things?" "Apparently," Caleb said, rubbing his temples. "But don't worry, I'm sure I'll mess up eventually." Vela smiled slightly. "Let's hope so. The next trial is physical. Perhaps you'll finally fail there." Caleb sighed, wondering if he'd survive long enough to fail anything. The third trial loomed over Caleb like a storm cloud. This time, it was a test of physical prowess, and Caleb felt the odds finally tipping against him. If there was one thing the Zithari clearly excelled at, it was their physical abilities. Their tall, muscular builds and natural agility made them a force to be reckoned with. Caleb, on the other hand, was an average human who relied more on wit than brawn. The arena was a circular chamber with a polished stone floor and high ceilings. Zithari spectators lined the edges, murmuring in anticipation. At the center of the arena stood a large, imposing pillar made of gleaming black metal, covered in strange runes that faintly glowed. "The trial is simple," the elder announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Lift the pillar of Drazek and hold it for as long as you can. It is a test of strength and endurance, a tradition among our people to prove one's worth." Caleb stared at the pillar, which looked as if it weighed more than his entire body. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered under his breath. Vela, standing beside him, leaned in and whispered, "Just make an effort and fail quickly. No one will judge you for being human." Caleb nodded, relieved that this trial might finally give him a chance to bow out gracefully. He approached the pillar, its surface cool and smooth under his hands. Taking a deep breath, he crouched down and wrapped his arms around the base. The crowd fell silent, watching intently. Caleb braced himself and gave the pillar an experimental tug, expecting it to stay firmly in place. To his surprise, the pillar shifted slightly. "What the?" Caleb muttered, blinking in confusion. He tried again, this time putting a bit more effort into it. The pillar moved again, its weight somehow less daunting than it appeared. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, and Caleb glanced back at Vela, who looked equally stunned. "Don't overdo it," she hissed softly, her calm facade slipping for a moment. But it was too late. Caleb, fueled by adrenaline and curiosity, gave the pillar a final heave. To his utter disbelief, he managed to lift it a few inches off the ground. The runes on its surface flared brightly, and the crowd erupted in astonished cheers. Caleb held the pillar for a few seconds before his arms gave out, and he dropped it back onto the floor with a loud thud. Gasping for breath, he turned to the elder, who looked thoroughly impressed. "Remarkable," the elder said, his voice filled with admiration. "Your strength is beyond what we expected from a human." Caleb's heart sank. He had failed at failing again. As they left the arena, Vela walked beside him, her expression unreadable. "How do you keep doing this?" she asked, her tone a mix of frustration and amusement. "I don't know," Caleb groaned. "I swear, I thought I couldn't lift that thing." Vela sighed, shaking her head. "At this rate, you might actually end up married to me." Caleb shot her a nervous glance. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But deep down, he was starting to wonder if fate had other plans. The buzz from Caleb's unexpected success in the third trial hadn't died down yet when a new problem arose. As he walked back to his quarters, exhausted and overwhelmed, he noticed the station's atmosphere had shifted. Whispers followed him, and the usual curious glances from aliens had turned into outright stares. Something was brewing, and Caleb didn't like it. When he reached his door, Vela was already waiting for him. Her usual calm expression was replaced with something sharper, concern mixed with irritation. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. Caleb sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We always have a problem. What's new this time?" "A rival has declared his claim," Vela said, her voice tight. "Zaroth, a Zithari noble, has challenged your right to these trials. He believes he is the only one worthy of my hand." Caleb blinked. "Wait, hold on. Someone wants to do these trials. Voluntarily." Vela didn't smile. "Zaroth is ambitious. He sees our marriage as a way to elevate his status. He doesn't care about me, only the power it brings. And now that you've surprised everyone with your unexpected successes, he feels threatened." Caleb frowned. "So, what happens now? Does he just take over, and I can go back to my normal life?" "No," Vela said firmly. "A rival's challenge means a direct confrontation. He's demanded a duel to prove his superiority. If he wins, you'll be disqualified from the trials, and he'll take your place as my suitor." Caleb groaned. "A duel? Seriously? Can't I just opt out?" "If you refuse, it will be seen as a sign of weakness," Vela explained. "It would dishonor not only you, but also my family. The alliance between humans and Zithari would be damaged." Caleb rubbed his temples. "Of course it would. Why wouldn't it?" Before he could complain further, a loud, commanding voice echoed down the corridor. "So this is the human everyone's talking about." Caleb turned to see Zaroth approaching. The Zithari noble was tall, even by their standards, with broad shoulders and an air of arrogance that practically radiated off him. His golden eyes scanned Caleb like a predator sizing up its prey. "You're smaller than I expected," Zaroth said with a smirk. "It's almost insulting that I have to waste my time on you." Caleb crossed his arms, mustering as much courage as he could. "Well, I'm sorry to disappoint. I wasn't exactly planning on being here either." Zaroth's smirk widened. "Tomorrow, we'll settle this. I'll show everyone that humans have no place in Zithari traditions." As Zaroth walked away, Vela turned to Caleb. "You'll need a plan. Zaroth is skilled, but he underestimates you. Use that to your advantage." Caleb sighed deeply. "Great. First, I have to lift a ridiculous pillar, and now I have to fight an alien noble. This just keeps getting better." Vela's lips curved into a faint smile. "You've surprised me before, Caleb. Let's see if you can do it again." Caleb wasn't sure whether to feel flattered or terrified. Either way, tomorrow was shaping up to be the most stressful day of his life. The following day arrived, and Caleb could barely focus on anything but the upcoming duel. The thought of facing Zaroth in a contest of strength, skill, and tradition filled him with dread. The Zithari had always been known for their combat prowess, and Zaroth, with his tall, muscular frame and confident swagger, seemed the perfect example of that. Caleb, on the other hand, was human, someone whose strengths were more about brains than brawn. Vela stood beside him as they entered the grand arena, the same place where he had already faced the trials. The spectators, a mix of Zithari nobles and curious aliens, filled the stands, their eyes locked on the two contestants. A hush fell over the crowd as Zarath stepped into the center of the arena, his posture straight and imposing. He wore a ceremonial battle suit, gleaming with intricate patterns that marked his noble status. Caleb was handed a simple set of combat gear, light armor that barely covered his torso and legs. He felt exposed, but it was the only choice. The duel was going to happen whether he was ready or not. "Don't let him intimidate you," Vela said quietly, her voice calm but firm. "Zarath is arrogant, but he has no idea how unpredictable humans can be. Stay sharp and use your creativity." Caleb nodded, trying to focus. It wasn't the strength of his muscles that would save him. It was his mind. He had to think fast, use his surroundings, and stay one step ahead. The elder Zithari stepped forward, raising a hand to silence the crowd. "The duel is simple," he announced. "A test of combat skills. The first to yield or fall is defeated. You may use whatever techniques you see fit." His gaze shifted to Caleb. "Human, are you ready to face your challenger?" Caleb glanced at Zarath, who was glaring at him, confident and sure of victory. Caleb's stomach tightened. He couldn't back out now. "I'm ready," Caleb said, his voice more confident than he felt. With a loud signal, the duel began. Zarath charged forward with impressive speed, his fists aimed directly at Caleb. Caleb barely dodged the first blow, stumbling slightly as he moved to the side. The crowd cheered, impressed by Zarath's power, but Caleb wasn't about to give up. He ducked low and grabbed a piece of nearby equipment, an old training sword left behind by previous contestants. The blade was crude, but it would give him a fighting chance. Zarath came at him again, faster this time. Caleb swung the sword, aiming for Zarath's legs, but the noble blocked it effortlessly with his forearm. The clash of metal echoed in the arena. "You're fast," Zarath sneered, "but not fast enough." Caleb could feel his body tiring, but he wasn't about to give up. He had learned to think on his feet in life, and now was no different. He needed to outsmart Zarath, not overpower him. As Zarath advanced again, Caleb feigned a stumble, dropping the sword to the ground. Zarath, sensing an easy victory, lunged for him. At the last second, Caleb rolled to the side, grabbed the sword, and swung it upward, catching Zarath off guard. The blade clipped Zarath's side, a shallow cut, but enough to make him hesitate. The crowd gasped. Zarath stepped back, his golden eyes flashing with fury. He hadn't expected to be injured. "That was a mistake," Zarath growled, wiping the blood from his side. He was more cautious now, clearly aware that Caleb wasn't going down without a fight. The duel continued, each strike more calculated, each move more desperate. Caleb could feel the burn in his arms and legs, but he refused to let up. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Zarath made a critical error. He lunged forward with an aggressive strike, leaving himself open. Caleb, with a quick sidestep and a precise strike, knocked Zarath's weapon from his hand. Zarath stumbled back, winded and stunned. He glared at Caleb, but it was clear he had lost. The elder Zithari raised his hand to declare the winner. "The human has won," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Caleb of Earth, you have defeated Zarath." The arena erupted in applause. Caleb's heart raced in his chest, and he could barely catch his breath, but a sense of triumph washed over him. He had done it. He had defeated Zarath and earned his place, at least for now. Vela rushed to his side, her expression a mix of relief and admiration. "You did it," she said, smiling for the first time in days. "I knew you could." Caleb smiled back, exhausted but proud. "I guess I'm not as helpless as I look." As the crowd continued to cheer, Caleb couldn't help but wonder if he had just stepped one step closer to the life he never expected, and maybe even to a future with Vela. The dust from the duel still lingered in the air as Caleb stood in the center of the arena, his chest heaving with exhaustion. The crowd was still roaring, a mix of disbelief and admiration for the human who had just defeated a Zithari noble. Caleb couldn't believe it himself. The battle had been close, and his body felt like it had been run over by a freight train, but the victory was his. Zarath, still fuming from his loss, was led away by his guards. The noble's pride was bruised, but Caleb knew he would challenge him again, one way or another. "Did you see that?" Caleb heard a voice beside him. It was Vela, her tone filled with both awe and relief. She had been watching from the sidelines, her eyes locked on him throughout the duel. "I can't believe it," Caleb said, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "I actually did it." Vela smiled at him, her golden eyes softening. "You proved everyone wrong. Not just Zarath, but my entire family. You showed them what you're made of." Caleb glanced at her. He had fought for himself, sure, but something about her made him want to impress her too. Maybe that was why he had kept pushing when he wanted to give up. "Thanks for the help," Caleb said. "I couldn't have done it without you." Vela's smile faltered for a moment. "You didn't need my help. You did it yourself." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Still, I'm pretty sure I would have messed up the moment Zarath got serious." Vela didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked away, her gaze shifting to the elder Zithari, who was now walking toward them, his face unreadable. Caleb straightened, unsure of what would happen next. The duel was over, but there was still the matter of the marriage. The elder spoke first, his voice solemn. "Caleb of Earth, you have demonstrated great strength, both in body and spirit. You have earned the right to continue in this trial. But I must ask, do you still wish to marry my daughter?" The question hung in the air. Caleb swallowed hard. He had fought through so much, faced challenges that tested his limits. But this wasn't a test of strength or skill. It was a question of his heart. I don't know," Caleb admitted, his voice quieter than usual. "I didn't expect to get this far. I didn't expect to win any of these trials." He turned to Vela, meeting her gaze. "And I definitely didn't expect to be standing here, facing this decision." Vela's expression softened, and she stepped closer to him. "Caleb, this isn't about what you expected. It's about what you want. I've been forced into this tradition for my whole life, but I never got to choose who I married." She paused, looking away for a brief moment. "Now, you have that choice. But if you do choose me, you'll be choosing a future, not just for yourself, but for both of us." Caleb thought about it for a moment. This was real, more real than anything he'd ever experienced. He hadn't been ready for any of this. Meeting Vela, the trials, the constant tension, but now he was standing at a crossroads. He could walk away, live his life as it had been, or he could step into a new world, a world with Vela by his side. Finally, Caleb spoke, his voice steady. "I'm not sure what the future holds, but I think I'm ready to try. To try with you, Vela." Vela's eyes widened, and a smile spread across her face, warmer than anything Caleb had seen before. "Then let's see what happens together," she said softly. The elder Zithari nodded, accepting Caleb's decision. "It is done. The union will proceed." As Caleb stood there, beside Vela, he felt a strange calm wash over him. The trials were over. The decision had been made. And though the future was uncertain, he knew that this path, his path, was one he would walk with her by his side. The days that followed the duel were a whirlwind of unexpected emotions. Caleb had barely processed his decision to marry Vela before the preparations for the ceremony began. The grand halls of the Zithari estate were alive with activity, and despite the grandness of it all, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that he was still in shock. One moment, he was a regular guy on a space station, and the next, he was preparing for a marriage to an alien princess. Vela had been surprisingly calm through it all. She'd taken charge of the arrangements, directing her family and the attendants with ease. Caleb, on the other hand, felt completely out of place. The Zithari customs were overwhelming, and the idea of marrying someone he had barely known a few weeks ago seemed almost surreal. But as the days passed, something inside Caleb shifted. Vela wasn't like the cold, distant royalty he had imagined. She was kind, thoughtful, and shared a quiet strength that made him admire her more with each passing moment. The more he got to know her, the more he realized how much he respected her, not just for her position, but for the person she was. On the morning of the ceremony, Caleb stood in front of a mirror in his quarters, staring at his reflection. He was dressed in a ceremonial outfit, an elegant suit of shimmering fabric that looked like something out of a fantasy novel. His hair was neatly combed, and he adjusted the collar nervously. It was all so much to take in, but there was a part of him that was finally ready. A soft knock on the door broke his thoughts. Caleb opened it to find Vela standing there, dressed in a gown of deep violet and gold, her hair flowing in soft waves around her shoulders. She looked every bit the princess, yet when she smiled at him, it was the same warm smile he had come to cherish. "You look amazing," Caleb said, his voice unsteady. Vela smiled, her eyes twinkling. "I could say the same about you." She stepped closer, taking his hands in hers. "Are you sure about this?" she asked softly, her voice filled with sincerity. "This is a huge commitment, and I know it's not something you planned for." Caleb looked into her eyes, seeing the quiet vulnerability she rarely showed. "I never planned for any of this, Vela, but after everything we've been through, I think I'm ready to try. With you. I can't promise the future will be easy, but I'm willing to face it as long as it's with you." Vela's eyes softened, and she squeezed his hands. "Then we'll make it work, together." The ceremony took place in the grand hall of the Zithari estate. The room was filled with Zithari nobles, friends, and family, all gathered to witness the union. Caleb and Vela stood before the elder, the entire room silent in anticipation. The elder spoke the traditional words of marriage, and Caleb could feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a union of two people, it was the joining of two cultures, two worlds. As the elder finished, he turned to Caleb. "Do you, Caleb of Earth, accept Vela as your wife, to honor and protect her, to walk with her through the challenges ahead?" Caleb took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "I do." Then the elder turned to Vela. "And do you, Vela of the Zithari, accept Caleb as your husband, to love and stand by him through all that comes?" "I do," Vela replied, her voice steady and filled with confidence. The ceremony ended with the exchanging of vows, and as they sealed their union with a kiss, the crowd erupted in cheers. Caleb felt a strange sense of peace settle over him. This was it. He had stepped into a new life, a life filled with uncertainty, but also with potential. As they walked back down the aisle together, Caleb couldn't help but smile. He had no idea what the future held, but with Vela by his side, he was ready to face it, whatever came next.